One of these days, I'm actually just going to download the Mario Kart, chime down. This is the way Riverside does this. Welcome back to a special episode of Talking Smack. Special because Josh is not here. When he heard that Aaron Rodgers was returning to the Steelers for his final year, reuniting with his head coach, Mike McCarthy, having been together with the Packers for over a decade, he went there to read the contract to make sure they could not be traded to the Packers this year. He does not want them back. So he's currently knee deep with legal. And instead, I have my good buddy here, Justin from the Movie Wire, to talk a spooky movie.
Wow, Josh sounds obsessed a little bit.
There is this weird, I guess the word would be obsession, maybe, about making his Packers win things. It's odd.
It's this obsession of his is going to get him in trouble. But as long as I'm on the show, I don't really fucking care.
It's true. I mean, if you could make a wish, I think it would be that the McCarthy and Rodgers do not return.
A wishing willow doesn't do that shit, so I think he's too far-fetched.
Yeah, maybe his next career will be as a barker. But we're going to hear from our friend at the Nerd Ranks, and then we're going to talk 2026's hottest movie right now, Obsession.
Hi, Super Nintendos. Are you a fan of comics, video games, cartoons, and general nerdery? I bet you are. I bet that's why you're listening to T-Smack. If you're loving T-Smack, hey, why not give Nerd Ranks a shot? It's the podcast where I break down some of our favorite nerd things, deep dives, rankings, and pure billowing clouds of nostalgia. Whether you're a retro gamer or connoisseur of the deepest lore, or you're just looking to escape the existential horrors of the world by wrapping yourself in a warm blanket of nostalgia, Nerd Ranks has a little something for everyone. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks, T-Smack.
That was a lullaby. I want this man singing me to sleep. Billowing. Oh, my God. I want to play video games in my dreams.
It's so gentle and soothing, and
it is.
People like us.
Read me 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh. So, Justin, if you had told me last year that the two most anticipated horror movies of the year would be being released in May, not the fall, and from YouTube creators scooped up by, I don't want to say indie distributors, but smaller powerhouse distributors like A24 and Blumhouse, I would have thought you were absurd. But I'm looking back over the last decade and a half or so, and we have a history of this. We have Smile that came out a few years back. That was Parker. That's Parker Finn. He was doing finishing grad school and other stuff, and released Laura Hasn't Slept into some smaller film festivals, winning prizes, and it got picked up on. He dumped on YouTube, did really well. To a lesser extent, you had Oculus with Mike Flanagan, who made that film from his Oculus Chapter 3, The Man with the Plan, which was another kind of festival movie that also got a lot of YouTube build-up, turned into a film. 2016's David F. Sandberg, Lights Out. David F. Sandberg had done a bunch of indie YouTube films. And now we have next week Backrooms, which is Kane Parsons, doing it off of doing a rendition of the creepypasta Liminal Spaces. That is where he built his career off of, releasing these short films on YouTube, expanding his world, doing the graphics himself. And someone eventually saw it, because several of them got tens of millions of views, and said, hey, we'll give you $10 million. And we think you can do something with this. I actually know the gym I work out at. One of the trainers are Gen Z. A lot of the trainers are Gen Z. And they're super excited for Backrooms because they've been watching it for the last 5 years. But now we have Obsession, a sub-$1 million movie from Curry Barker, who did comedy YouTube skits with his friend. Then they started doing horror shorts. They tried to get distribution with a small film of theirs called Milk and Lemonade or something like that. It was only about 62 minutes long. They made it for their a low budget for themselves. Couldn't get picked up anywhere. Dumped it on YouTube, along with their other shorts. Lots of views. Someone swung around and said, "Hey, can you do something for $1 million?" And now we have the rare case of a horror movie opening pretty decently, about 20 million its first weekend. I saw it the second weekend here, where it made 30 something million. Distribution is by Blumhouse. It's up to like almost 83 million. It's going to crack 100 easily. Massive return. They're already talking sequels, though Curry Barker's not really interested in sequels. He's more like, hey, other people can explore my world. I think I want other things to do, which being 26-year-old, powerhouse coming out of nowhere with Blumhouse distribution, which Blumhouse didn't even step in until after the film was complete, after it started during the festival circuit for pickup. That's when Blumhouse said, "I'll give you a crap ton of money. Let me do this." Is YouTube where we're going to start finding creators? Is this some kind of like distribution platform? I'm just shocked when I was thinking about like, oh, this must be rare. Then I'm going back and back, and no, this has been happening for like about a decade now.
This is no surprise because even if you're watching TV with your family, you're going to have people scrolling on their phones, watching videos on YouTube, watching TikToks. So YouTube is the new platform where it's going to be of preference. And I just want to give a shout out. I'm not against this at all because this is a great introduction to some fantastic filmmakers. And shame on you for mentioning Lights Out, because that was a short film that turned into absolute shit. So let's take Lights out of this conversation because that's the audible. But here, what Barker does do is something that's going to set the platform, because I just want to list it here. He did shoot this movie for under $1 million, and it looks premium. It looks high end. It does everything that it needs to do. And not to mention, it was also the music scenes were shot where Wayne's World was shot. So that's just a little Easter egg there. But this is where, yes, and Andy Richter's in it too, which really amplifies it for me because it really did bring me back. But here's the deal. This is something that studios are drooling over. If you can take a movie that not only does scare, but gets you to think after the movie is done for under $1 million, that is almost like an addiction that you have to go back to this movie to really comprehend what it's trying to throw at you. It's a brilliant move by Barker. This is a movie that you can tell Barker. I didn't know Barker before this movie. I had no real idea. It made me look up his work. But this is a director that knows exactly what he's doing. It's like he's seasoned. This is something studios are going to seek this director for because, one, it's going to make him money, and two, it's going to look top notch. When I was writing my review, this is one that I had walking out of the theater, a mindset that I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. And as I was writing my review, it was encouraging me. The more it made me think, and it amplified my review. And then I had to go back and see it if I'm validating my thoughts correctly. And I said, what the fuck am I thinking? This is a solid 3.5 stars. I do have my issues with the movie that we'll get into. But at the end of the day, this is a horror tragedy of something that we don't see very often. And it is absolutely brilliant because this taps into relatability fear, relationship fear, self fear, rejection fear. This movie is not just a horror movie. This is something that Barker taps into, really engaging the audience. This hasn't happened since The Exorcist, and it's one of the best horror movies of the last decade.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I went and saw it in the early afternoon with a friend. I typically only see horror movies with the friends nearby because it just being by myself, even if there's like a crowd of people, just no, I need somebody next to me that can be like feeling a bond of like, it's okay if I jump, right? Okay, cool. And the longer the movie went on, the more I began to think about how I would be reacting in these moments. But on top of that, so we're gonna have to go full spoilers because I have some questions for you, because I was looking up afterwards some of the things that Corey Barker was saying, but also I was looking up things that Michael Johnston, who plays Baron Bear, the main love interest, if you want to call it that, and then Indy Navarrete, who plays Nikki, with their feelings on some emotional moments of it, because this script, for being a first-time theatrical release director, and the previous film was only about 62 minutes, which is probably why they got some issues with distribution, but hey, it got them out there and it got them this. The mastery of lighting that they worked with their cinematographer about. And this was written, edited, and directed by Curry Baker. It never really leaves Bear, and it never really leaves him alone. And that works because Nikki never leaves him alone once the wish happens. And I'm going to see it probably again next weekend. I think I want to see it one or two more times in the theater because I need to confirm a few things for myself. But the further away I get from the movie, the more I realize the intelligence of not being overly descriptive with the world and other people's motivations. Because we only see Bear's point of view. We don't see the people's point of view, or we don't find out the people's point of view that are manipulating him into his actions or into his failures. And I love that. There is such a confidence from this director of what he wants us to see and what he doesn't want us to see. And that makes me think way too much about this movie.
Well, I think it's one of those, it's shot through Bear's perspective, and I think it's a brilliant move because this is a guy that we see really early on in the film, from the visual of him to his actions. This is the guy that we either know or internally we were at one point around that age where we're insecure, where we don't feel good enough, where the only resource that we think we're going to get the girl is by a wish. And I think that is an absolute beautiful but brilliant, and at times can be a little bit scary because the movie does go into a lot of control themes. This is a dual layered film. And in my review, I said this is a horror tragedy where it really does tap into the Romeo and Juliet theme that I really don't want to give away the ending, so I won't. But it puts the stamp on what I was feeling throughout the movie, where you have a lot of manipulation on a subtle level here with our Bear character, where you have the nurse, you have Friar Lawrence as Sarah and Ian as the friends whispering in Bear's ear. That really does kind of lead to where Barker is really going to go with this material. So it is a beautifully kind of told story, but frightening because by the time we get, I will say this, the sound of the snap at the end, and I won't say anything else. It is eerie, it's unsettling, and it's one of those that the movie almost commands you to go back and watch it again to say, what does this movie mean? And it's all about the fear of relatability of we've all been there. We've all thought that we can't get the girl and we are out of reach. And it plays a really fine line of who's really in control here. And you made a brilliant point here where we don't have those insertion shots, but we do have some subtle moments. And I loved the duct tape on the door. And as the relation grows, you see that pile of duct tape just get thicker. And it was really subtle that it doesn't distract from the movie and it doesn't hold our hand. We get what the conflict is. It doesn't hold our hands to say what should be scary, what shouldn't be scary. This is an immersion for the viewer to get involved into this couple where we kind of know what's going to happen. We get subtle hints of what's going to happen, but at the same time, we are worried for these characters on what's going to happen to Sarah, what's going to happen to Bear. We don't know, but we get the idea of what the climax is going to be. This isn't a traditional horror movie where it's just you and Boo. This is one that really does tap into the emotional piece of it without traumatizing the audience. It makes us feel. And that is the greatest feel. That is the greatest talent of a filmmaker is to make us feel our fears, not to just shove it in our faces and get a reaction. And that's what makes this one so special.
Oh, I completely agree with you because I mean, I do like a good gory horror film, Nightmare on Elm Street, Jason. I'm not a much fan of like the Hostel films or the later Saw films like Beyond Saw 4. It just gets way too much torture porny for me, and it's the queasiness. Other than maybe 2 scenes, this film isn't necessarily gory. What this film is it's, to me, it is challenging you on at what point do you fully lose sympathy for Bear. So the movie starts off with Bear professing love to this person who you find out is actually the waitress at this little diner they go to. And immediately that conversation, and his friend Ian is trying to assist him, who also works in the music store. And that interaction becomes very important later on, which is why I want to see it again. Because as I'm sitting there and the waitress is kind of offering advice, Ian's kind of offering advice, and I'm like, the waitress is a female. You're professing love admittedly to a female. I would go with her over Ian's advice, but at the same time, some of Ian's advice may work, kind of. And then you start finding out that he is just this Bear is just this kind of sad sap who doesn't have confidence. He is kind of falling in through life, not sure what he wants to do. He's still living in his grandmother's house, which it looks like he possibly inherited after she died, but he's never really mentioned his parents, so his parents may also be dead. And he's living alone there. And he's working at a music store, but he does well, but he has some ambitions, but he doesn't really. But he also moved here recently or the last few years because Nikki's been the only person who's been nice to him. And I do find that interesting. He mentions that Nikki's the only person who's been nice to him, which then puts even further juxtaposition into how I feel about his relationship with Ian, who's giving him advice, who works with him. And then Nikki wants to tell him something. She's quitting. There's some things happening in her life. She no longer wants to work there. That gets a deeper tangle tie further on as the more you find out. And so what he does is she accidentally drops his her like a little stone necklace into a sink. They're on the phone. He goes to the store. He's looking for the right one. Can't find the right one, but he finds this One Wish Willow, this gag gift for $6.99 that, hey, you crack it and make your wish. And on the night that he should profess his love to her, that the right moment is finally there, that she's alluding to some stuff, he's kind of there. She even at one point challenges him saying, why are you kind of being mean to me right now? Like, do you actually like me? Which is very fascinating. That's the piece of advice Ian gives, like, oh, you should be a little mean to her. She'll like that. And that's when she's like, so do you like me or not? And he's like, yeah. And as she walks away, he dejectedly remembers he was supposed to give her the gift, forgot over and over again to give it to her, and he makes a wish himself. And immediately, as the audience, we know something's wrong. And yet I feel so much understanding with Bear because he's not looking out through the car window. He only sees her but when she gets back to the car. But we are seeing the window. We are seeing her in darkness. We see her stopped at the door on her porch. And it's so fascinating because as things progress, he begins to bargain with himself as to whether or not this is real for him. Heck, his friends even tell him, she was called Freaky Nikki for a while. She's done a lot of drugs and some other stuff. Maybe she's back on drugs. So that is where I am just so confused. Like, Justin, at what point did you stop having sympathy for Bear?
I never did.
Okay.
Well, let me back up. I had sympathy for both characters because here's kind of the deal is when it comes to Nikki, we see spurts of her not in control. We see regret from Bear. And if these characters were dislikable and Barker wanted both these characters to be dislikable, we wouldn't have had those moral dilemmas, those conversations of Bear. It would have just been a horror movie. But even when we get the scene that you just spoke of, where we have that early scene of the car, where it was the perfect moment to just go all in and say, I like you. We have this overhanging lack of confidence from Bear that he just can't get there, even though it's a perfect moment. We want to shove Bear and say, will you fucking get the girl? Say one goddamn sentence and end the movie. But of course, then we'd have 88 minutes of filler. So this is where I think we get early buy into these characters where we want to see happiness for both. And that's the foundation of a tragedy. And that's when I knew these characters are going to carry us the rest of the movie until the final moments where I knew something bad was going to happen for both. But when it comes to what Barker does is he keeps that lingering throughout the movie. And we do get horror elements. It's creepy when Nikki moves at nighttime. It's very smart that it's not overly done. But it's one of those that when we get to the final moments, it's God damn it. This makes me feel bad, but I understand it. And what does this movie mean? So I think this movie is one not to intentionally scare. The themes are intentionally there to scare. So I never lost sympathy for either character because, like I said in my review, this is about love and control, control versus love. So nobody is in control here. It's not, this could have easily gone the Bear is in complete control over this female against her will, but it really doesn't focus on that. It focuses on the incontrollable will versus love. Both of them have feelings. That is obvious from the beginning of it. But I don't know. This is a movie that I'm still trying to digest, but at the same time, we can tell that this movie isn't trying to go fully dark with the topic of control, but it's overhanging themes to allow the viewer to take what they want away from it. There's going to be 1,000 different interpretations of this movie, and it's all about relatability. So, and I think that's the most important thing to take away from this movie is based on what you've had in past relationships, what you've actually had in insecurities, everybody's going to relate differently to this movie. And that's what makes it terrifying is we don't know what to expect, or we don't know who we go to this movie with that's sitting next to us is going to react to it. So, and it's not a traumatic experience. It's a really thought-provoking experience. So it does have some good kind of scares to it and being squirmy in your seat, but the main intent to it is to really make you think and to relate to the characters on screen. I don't think Barker's intent is to hate these characters. I think his intent is to really find out who we're going to relate with on a relationship level.
Yeah, I agree with that because so he makes the wish that she would love him more than anyone in the world. And as she comes back to the car, because of the interaction of that conversation, she expresses like regret that she didn't properly sympathize with him that he had about his cat. He lost his cat because it overdosed on some pills that again betrays his either stunted growth or his inability to move on or even really properly take care of himself, because that house is his grandmother's house. He hasn't removed pictures off the wall. It's his grandmother's pictures of like him and his parents and cat photos and other pets and baby photos. He hasn't emptied the cabinet that has all her medication, which at first I thought was his medication, but turns out it's actually hers. It looks like he's even sleeping in her bedroom. And so it is this kind of stunted situation of like this person who is unconfident, but also a bit depressed. And how many people, like, I mean, you've seen those coming of age movies, high school movies and all this stuff like that. And, people are pulling, he loves me not, the flower petal things, or they're playing with that little square game where it's like, and he loves me most. And, they flip it over. Does he love me or not? All those things are making wishes and stuff. So that they have this awkward conversation, and then she comes back with like, maybe she's reaching for him, saying, hey, listen, I wasn't nice enough to you about this situation. Sarah was nicer to you at the bar than I was, and I was more focused on stealing $20 from Sarah to give to a person on the street versus focus on you, who I've repeatedly claimed you're my best friend, and even guilted you into coming out tonight so I could talk to you. So I can understand that. And I can also understand that when you start falling in love with somebody, or you believe that they love you back, there are oddities to living together. There are things you're going to find out about them. So I can understand he does not live in a world in which, oh yeah, I snapped the willow and she wants to be with me. No, he is taking the things that she has told him, and she's professing to him and then confiding to him like, oh, I didn't tell you my father is sick. Well, aren't you estranged from your father? Yeah, but he still reached out to me. I know people who've been through that. Like, I don't talk to my parents. And all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Oh, my dad's moving in with me because he has cancer. Oh, okay, cool. And then dynamics change. And then there is still this unknown entity of, why was she called Freaky Nikki? Why does she have some of these odd tattoos? Why is she moving on, wants to change her own life? That's why she's quitting the music store. These are things he's finding out. These are things we don't know. These are things we're not aware of. And so he's grappling with the fact that, wait, she claims to love me, but she's acting weird. But she may be on drugs. Is there a drug abuse past? Is there a mental illness past? And as things go deeper and deeper into this relationship, you are correct that there are multiple layers of control here. In theory, yes, he should be immediately a bad guy. He cracked the stick. She loves him unwillingly, obsessed with him. But he's also afraid of what she's doing when he's not there, and that she's interjected herself so much into his life, basically forcefully moving in with him, controlling him, not letting him go to work by himself, not letting him go out with friends by himself. And that also is a reflection on, we have friends, of the genders who've had relationships like that, where they don't do things alone. They can't do things alone. They, oh, my boyfriend has access to my phone and my password and all that stuff, and he checks up on me because I've cheated before, so this is a trust thing. He reads my stuff. Or the same thing the other way, where people are like, well, yeah, I always leave my air tag on because, well, I made a mistake a few years back getting drunk. And so there's these layers of relationships. And then you get stuck in this pattern of fear of this person's intruding on you. But do you love them? I mean, if I love them, so is this okay? Is this permissible? And are these other people who are now whispering in my ear, are they doing so for my own good, for her good, anyone's good? And so the deeper we get into this movie, the more I'm not like, there's a part of me that is very aware. I'm watching a horror movie. This is a swish that went badly. I can understand why none of the people are looking at them going, like, forcefully going, something's wrong. What did you guys do to each other? It all feels very real because the mystical angle of this wish does not cause monsters to appear out of closets or a haunted house with rushing blood. It's just behavior. And I love that.
It's one of those that we can look at the word love. Love is an outcome. You have to have horror. You have to have conflict before you reach the level of love. And I think that's what Barker really does here is we don't get all the answers. We know both characters have conflicts. They have internal conflicts. And I think a lot of viewers, a lot of audience, a lot of humans around the world know that we have to face horror before we can get to the love stuff. And I think it's a big fork in the road where when we are faced with the horror, which path are we going to go? And that's really where we get to the conflict versus love, the love versus conflict. You can go to two different sides. And I think that's what Barker is really intended to do, is have a study of, you know what, everybody's been through this. So how do we get past the horror? And Bear, it's almost a symbolic piece where we have a wishing stick, a willow wishing stick to solve all of our problems. And I think that is the core of the messaging here, is there is no such stick. And if there was, nothing gets solved. And it's almost like saying ignoring the problems of a relationship will lead to horror and not love in the end result. So it's one of those, you can have love in the beginning or you can have love at end. It's where you're going to face the horror aspect of it. And I think it's almost, we have also additions to that, where we have outside parties whispering in the ear. And I made a Romeo and Juliet reference earlier, and this is almost like we take all the outside sources of Nikki, playing Juliet, of course, and we take everybody whispering in Juliet's ear and we force it on Bear. What if Friar Lawrence, without the good intent, becomes negative to self-appease him? What if the nurse, without the great intent with Juliet, decides to manipulate? This is where these two friends all have a motive. And this is where Bear really does get into that conflict, that everything's coming down on him because he picked the opposite direction. He picked horror he picked love instead of the horror direction. And I think that's what Barker is really trying to go with, is when you go down that path and you have outside sources, it's just going to end in a greater tragedy. And that is the main message to relationships, is you have to get through all the secrets, the conflicts, before you can get to the magic mountain of love, or else it's going to end like Bear and Nikki.
I agree with you. This is, if anything, this is a metaphor for dating in the
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I never want to date again. Thank God I'm married, because honestly, this one would terrify me. But you know what? At the same time, most of us have been through it. If you haven't been in a relationship like that, but you can relate to the conflicts each character has, you can reflect on even Bear's lack of self-confidence. And that's why I think Barker keeps it so damn vague on what happens in the background. It's not necessary, because we can kind of place the pieces together on why Bear is not as confident as he is. And, and that's where I'm going to go into my main problem with the movie. And that's what really did give that half a star difference from a perfect score for me, is I wanted one scene. I don't care if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, one scene where it solidified where my thought process was going to go. And I'm being selfish, I know, but where these two sit down and see what a dialogue session is, to really kind of break down a conversation between the two. Because I think the conversations, as we get into the end of the second half to the climax, we're getting 2 to 3 sentence conversations, and I'm not getting much from it. I think it had a stronger first half than second half until we get to the final 2-3 minutes. But I really wanted something to solidify the messaging of dialogue between them. And I think that's what really pulled Barker back when it comes to a filmmaker, is saying, let me flex my muscles and say, I can execute direction, I can execute tone, I can execute the feeling of the messaging, but let me show you what I can do in writing. So I'm not saying it's a horrible written film. It's not. But that would have made this movie perfect, to have these two just sit on the couch in a tense moment in a back and forth, to really kind of drive this movie home, to make the climax even that more impactful. That is my only issue with this movie.
I can definitely see that, because as it builds towards the latter half, where there's a phone call conversation to customer support, where I can see him dismissing that as this person's screwing with me, because he does the research like any of us would. We would like to wait, does a wishing willow work? You're looking up Which, by the way, great fake search engine, Probe. I thought that was great. Probe with an alien. I'm like someone should actually trademark that and do that. That'd be great. But then he's like going on like Reddit or something, like, and the people are like, of course it doesn't work. And other people are like, I swear it works. I'm like, yeah, I get these when I'm looking up for a product review before I purchase something. I get the exact same threads like, this is the worst product. Never buy this again in your life. And people are like, I love it. And so he ends up calling customer support, and the nonchalantness of the person who answers with there is a great twist in there where you hear something. But I can understand him not believing in that moment that was real. It's a gag gift. It's a shop. I'm dealing with an unstable person who's now inserted themselves completely in my life. Which is another thing. Don't date at work. It hardly ever works out. The music store is Andy Richter owns it. His daughter co-runs it while she's applying for art schools. The friend Ian is there, and then it's Nikki and Bear. It's a very shallow pool. And there's really only one good option. You don't want to date the boss's daughter if this is your job. And then there's Nikki. So I can understand that, like, if you bought this gag gift and he's like treating it like it's real, the person on the other end is probably going to screw with you. But we, of course, as the informed public, are like, well, this is a horror movie, therefore it's real. But I do agree with you that as the movie is crescendoing, it is bouncing back and forth between he's at home and weird stuff is happening with Nikki. And then at work, people are like, dude, what's going on with you two? You can't even leave. You guys are never apart from each other. You don't talk, you're not interacting with us anymore. What's going on? Back to weirdness with Nikki. And in that moment, there is a bit of pride there where you can be this, like, I'm with the person who I love. They've accepted me. I need to accept their baggage. I'm not going to admit that this is a failure. I'm not going to admit that things at home are terrible. I can understand it. And it's only when an outburst happens in public amongst all your friends that you then, that pushes the film to reach its climax, where he tries to do something, where he tries to reach out and get help, where he tries to resolve the situation. I can understand that. I've had friends who've been through that. Heck, as a teenager, I've been through, we've all had terrible relationships. But I do agree with you. I would have liked to have a moment or two somewhere in the second act where, instead of him trying to run damage control as ineptly as he can, that we do see what a longer form conversation is like between them. Because they do cook together, they sleep together, they're watching movies and stuff together, they go on dinner dates. What are those longer form conversations like as your relationship is devolving into this chaotic mess that you can barely control and compose yourself at work because you are fearing going home? I think that would have been a 2-3 minute conversation would have been great. The movie was about an hour 45, so it wouldn't have added much to it. But at the same time, the movie is so tightly wound of building that pressure that I can understand why that might have been excised. But at the same time, it does kind of need it to help. It especially would have helped me decide, who do I feel worse for?
Well, it does add as almost a pressure cooker, right? And I get the intent to it, that you have to appease horror fans. You have to keep us on the edge of our seats. But at the same time, that's where the muscle is really, truly granted, is, can you do that and still hold to the dialogue, still present us with dialogue that keep us on the edge of our seats? And I love the messaging that you brought up of keep your pen at a company ink, because you're absolutely right. But it's one of those that Bear is in a lose-lose situation, and it's created by him. But I don't know. This is one of those that you can't go into this movie thinking you're just going to be scared. You have to be okay with recognizing relationships of the past, as kind of you said, right? You have to be okay with having those memories come surface level, because I can bet that those that have been in relationships will find something to relate here, whether it's control, whether it's lack of self-confidence, whether it's I'm not good enough, whether it's the wishing stick. And I love the aspect of where Bear does call customer service, and the customer service guy is voiced by Barker, by the way. It's almost like he doesn't want to go to his friends. He doesn't want to get that outside opinion, whether that he thinks they're not going to guide him in the right way, because Ian sure kind of didn't in the beginning.
Hell no.
It's almost like a reach to say, I need an outside source. I need outside help. And that's a good little Easter egg when it comes to a toxic relationship of, I can't trust my closest friends. My friends have seen this girl in a social environment, which is a brilliant scene and very uncomfortable. And it's probably the most terrifying moment of the movie in that social scene. But the 800 number is really just kind of saying, this is the last resort of help. And I love that because it really does take the other characters and make them still relevant, but it makes this customer service line as kind of a hint to say, there's more resources out there, and you might not like what we have to say, but it's going to be the truth. So that 800 number is the most truth that Bear gets out of the entire movie of anybody he relates with.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's very true. Because even when he finally does kind of allow himself to listen to somebody, that person is not the best lifeline per se, because their interaction with him is, which the movie does such a rogue pull with, because you think like maybe he's finally going to get help, but also maybe this is actually the person he should have been paying attention to the whole time. But at the same time, does that person have is she thinking that she's the savior? I'm going to rescue this person that I like, that I'm going to pull them from the depths of this thing because my life's on the upswing, and I've always liked him. So I'll spur him away because she's quitting anyway. She won't see him. I'll see him at work. So there is a manipulation there that she may be doing these things for her own benefit because she has not only insider information to other aspects of their relationships, but also she has her own motivations. So yeah, I didn't think about the 1-800 number. That is another little bit of nuance. But yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending because I think the last 10-15 minutes is phenomenal. The thing I wanted to touch on was the mastery of Nikki, her actress, Indy. Her body mastery is amazing. The way she's able to manipulate her face to just be like this, when you're in an obsessive love like this, to basically have her emotions be either 100% rage, 100% happy, or 100% sorrow.
Are you talking about the sex scenes? Because those were brilliant. I 100% agree with you.
No. I was going to say her standing in the corner. I've never been more terrified of someone holding...
Too.
Yeah. I was never been more terrified of somebody holding up a potted plant in my life. Or when she's just straight up sulking because she doesn't want to stay at home on her day off. And I'm like, what the like, this person is an emoji in real life. Like, and that, I looked it up, not related at all to Jim Carrey. It's a little sad. But I'm excited, man. I am so excited to see Backrooms. I'm excited to see what Baker does next. And it reminded me, there's two other people I wanted to mention coming from YouTube people. Danny and Michael Filippo, the people who did Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, also did kind of like YouTube songs. But someone named Dylan Clark released Portrait of God, a short from a few years back about a woman talking about a portrait, like she's doing like a dissertation on it for school. And it's a terrifying little 7.5-minute short. They have a few others as well. It got picked up to be a theatrical, expanded to a theatrical release, being shepherded by Sam Raimi. And if we can get horror like this, that is not just what's a new version of a slasher, but is that probes, that is not a new zombie movie, necessarily a vampire movie, that probes the human experience in new ways, I am excited because one of the things this movie does well is Baker says this is not a possession movie. This is not a possession movie. This is not an alien entity taking over. He's like, this is getting your wish. And that is what you get. And so people are like, well, then she immediately became possessed. I'm like, and he's like, no, I'm leaving this open-ended. I'm not explaining everything. This is just what happens when you make a wish that goes wrong.
I'm excited because even though I joked about Lights Out, that is where we took YouTube shorts and made it full on horror. There was no thought put into it. It was a concept that they just stretched to death. Here we take even YouTube shorts, video games, Iron Lungs, Exit 8, Back Rooms. So a lot of these movies have potential. I know I was neutral on Iron Lung, but I can see the value in it with the entertainment value and the kind of the in-depth scares to it. These movies are going the extra mile with a smaller budget because they have to put some thought into the written material. And that is something that we're seeing the potential. I know a couple of years ago, I said we're in the kind of the cycle of horror where we get a reset, where we went into the elevated horror to back to slasher. And now we're getting some smart horror where it really does ask for audience involvement. We went through, in the early 2000s, the found footage phase of it. And this one actually brought me back to how terrified I was with Paranormal Activity because it did tap into being that safe haven at home to involving some horror. Here we get some of the same, where we feel safe with somebody that we have feelings for, but it's not that safe. This is really tapping into the emotions and the relatability of the characters. And I think this is the strategy going forward that studios, again, like I said, are going to drool over. Audiences are going to love it. And I just hope we get more of that. And I can't wait for Backrooms based on what we've seen in this last year, or last couple of years, I should say, that really did crescendo horror into this kind of structure. So fingers crossed, we get more smart writing from independent filmmakers, ones that have put their stuff onto YouTube that really have to work to put in the effort to get people to watch their stuff, because you can tell the amount of effort from Hollywood, multi-millions are spending more money compensating to have us feel something versus somebody writing something and taking the time for free to an extent to make us feel something. And I think this is a brilliant exclamation mark on what we're going to see coming forward. And I hope, fingers crossed, Backrooms is going to do more of the same.
I'm hopeful too. I haven't had a horror movie like this in a long time where I've been thinking about it on my drive home, and then I went online going like, who the heck are these people? Where did they come from? Why do I sympathize with them? Like, I have questions. I want a movie that is a slow burn with a great payoff, and I hope that Barker's next film is really, really good. And I'm excited that we're maybe in some kind of horror renaissance, because a sub-$1 million movie that can just grow week to week is fantastic, and it gets a conversation going. Like, I really loved seeing how many conversations of people arguing over little nuances of like, well, when was it real Nikki? When was it freaky Nikki? And like, how much in control was she really? I love that. And yeah, so good film. Justin gave it 3.5 stars. I'm giving it the Talking Smack rating of must see. It's not a tire fire. And Justin, where can we find you outside of conversations where Josh is not allowed?
You can find me over at the Movie Wire, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also check out Back to the Balcony, where I joined Antonio from the Cult-Worthy Cinema podcast to give kind of reviews of old Siskel and Ebert reviews on movies to see if they still hold up or if they're accurate. And you can also find me on all social media platforms at Movie Wire Show.
And thank you for joining us on this special Joshless episode. I apparently need to hit play. If you've seen Obsession and have thoughts about it, feel free to join our Discord. The link is down below. And, thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes and Ritual Studios for our avatars. I suddenly forgot the other one, but yes, we include links. Please click them. Thank you for listening. And I hope you all have a great week and give some love to movies. It's things like this that keep theaters alive.
Now let's talk about how obsessed you are with me.
Well, I did move in.